Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to you all. My name's Harleen, and I'll be your host for today's session. I hope you're having a great day so far and are now excited and ready for the brand new informative session of the Masterclass series organized by the Institute of Product Leadership. Today's session is on unveiling the world of UX UI design, the role, skills, and career paths. Once our speaker for today has presented his insights, we'll open up for questions. You can keep your questions ready and post them on Zoom in the Q&A section. This session is also being streamed live on LinkedIn. So, viewers on LinkedIn, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section and I'll make sure to share them with our speaker. You guys should take advantage of this opportunity and engage with our esteemed speaker with some good and intriguing questions. Without further ado, I'd like to kickstart this session by welcoming and introducing our speaker for this masterclass, Arpith. Arpith is a seasoned expert with over 12 years of experience in human centric product design and management. He has led multidisciplinary design teams for more than 8 years, driving innovation and creating impactful user experiences across fintech, B2B, and B2C domains. Known for his empathetic and results driven leadership, Arpit is passionate about empowering design teams and crafting solutions that truly resonate with others. So pleased to have you join us this evening, Arpit.
Thank you so much, Harleen, for this introduction.
Of
You made it
course.
sound larger than life, but thank you so much. I think before we sort of begin, I'll also sort of take this opportunity to share some little bit more insights about me as a human being. So I mean, whatever Harleen said on top of that, obviously, but um, I think I graduated as a in my bachelor's, did my digital media course, and then sort of always wanted to be a designer. So that sort of kickstarted my design journey. Worked with various sort of organizations from Flipkart to Walmart and InMobi, to name some of the more popular brands. But yeah, worked in various different type of mediums and organizations. But yeah, and I think at UB currently, it's a more lean organization, which means that I'm actually taking care of or leading the charter for three organizations within the UB group. It's a challenge in itself, and it's a interesting journey. I'll in this session, I'll talk to you guys about a little bit about my experiences, some of my learnings, and some of the insights that will probably help you take things forward in your own journeys, right? So, with further ado, I'll just get started. I'll share my screen and we'll go through it. And for the audience here as well, um, please feel free to sort of be more collaborative in that sense. If you guys stuck somewhere, or you're not able to see the screen, or you're not able to hear me or anything of that sort, please obviously raise this. The team will be able to help as and when we go. And in the entire journey, I'll also ask you to open up Chrome, your browsers, put in a particular link and watch a video. So please keep all of that handy as well. Yeah, so we'll just get started. I'll share my screen. Like Harleen sort of mentioned, we'll specifically talk about some of the roles, some of the skills, and how certain career paths look like for individuals and working professionals as well. Um, so some of the key reasons why we're here today. Obviously, there's a lot of learning that we can do. We'll talk about fundamentals of design, who are the kind of people that typically design, some of the good examples of designs and some of the bad examples, and we'll sort of bring our creative juices flowing with some of these examples, right? We'll understand the different roles, what are the different roles existing in the design space, how does the different team functions with diverse role structures, which kind of role actually suits you, right? We'll also talk about some of the key skills. There's a very detailed, comprehensive studies on competency metrics. We'll sort of touch bases on that. We'll also talk about some of the design methodologies on design thinking front, how different organizations use different design principles to solve different problems. We'll also talk about different tools, right? Like there's tons of tools today compared to how it was like 10 years ago. So we'll talk about some of the tools that I personally use, my team uses, I've seen organizations use. Um, we'll also drill down a little bit deeper in terms of roadmap, in terms of like how do you get started, how do you sort of create impact, and what directions you can head when you talk about design as a larger charter. And finally, we'll talk about some of the key takeaways that'll help us as individuals and professionals to navigate into this complex world of design. Right. So firstly, we'll just to kick things started. So there's this video that I would like you guys to watch. It's called Lifted by Pixar. I'll actually paste this link on the chat so you guys can sort of take a look at it. So what I want you guys to do is click on the link. It's about 5 minute video. I also do the same with you guys, and we'll just watch this video, try to sort of go through it, and then once you guys are done, just let me know, give me a thumbs up, or just comment in that you guys are done, and then we can go forward with it. Sounds good? And even folks on the panelists can also sort of do this activity. It's pretty interesting, so it'll be a good way to get things started.
Of course.
Okay, so it's about 5 minutes, so we can quickly sort of view this video and get back. Okay, yeah, I mean, just adding on to some of those points, right, which is absolutely spot on. You would have noticed that the character sort of struggled a lot with too many controls, right? Alien confused with how to handle without knowledge. Absolutely, right? There's too many controls that there's like hundreds of different buttons that they have to sort of wonder what to do. None of those buttons, if you notice, had any labels or any instructions, right? Which button does what. That was also very hard to sort of navigate. Nitesh is telling exactly we need to understand what we have to do, right? Absolutely. So the design is also very complex, right? There is no manuals, there's no instructions, there's no guide of sorts. And it's a very complex activity that the character is required to do at this point of time, right? Also, if you notice, there's no guidance that the mentor or the other character was staying, zero sort of support for anything, right? The whole process was something that the main character is supposed to figure out. Um, and if you also notice, all of these buttons look very similar, right? There is no distinction between what one button would do, what another button would do. They all look very similar. And on top of that, without any labels or any instructions, it gets very, very complex. Um, there's also, all controls look similar. It's more like trial and error in terms of where they're lifting and where, the human character is moving around. And at the same time, by doing all of this as a trial and error sort of format, you also get a sense that the end user, in this case, the human being, is the one who is actually suffering, right? Luckily, he was asleep, but then in any other sort of case, it would be an hospital visit nonetheless. And lastly, if you look at it, the main character had an anxiety, right, of fear, the fear of being watched, right, fear of being judged by others, right. In this case, it was very, very evident where because of that fear, you start going haywire, right? You start doing a lot of different things, which wouldn't really make sense. So yeah, I mean, like this is a piece of evidence where some of the systems that we work today, right, or we see today, are pretty complicated in nature, and those systems will require the interface or the design thinking to sort of kick in to help make this navigation of the journey a lot more easier, right? And there's a great example for complexity, great example for confusion, and also the lack of understanding in terms of what you need to do, right? So with that, we'll get started now that a lot of us have had a taste of some of this piece. We'll get started. We'll talk about like who can actually design. I think traditionally, the design as a term has been very narrow. If you notice, we always sort of thought only certain kind of people would be any typical designers. A, a very automated inclination to design would be from an artist who is great at sketching or creating artwork and things like that. We also have interior designers who are all traditionally known for being a designer and fashion designers as well. And if you ask your parents or your grandparents, they'll only relate it to these three or four different kind of functions when it comes to design. And then when you tell that you're a UX designer or UI designer, and they don't really know what that is, right? So it sort of goes back into the early 20th century in terms of how all of these different roles have been evolved. And today, because we have a lot of products that are coming from a digital standpoint, there has been a vast uptake on how designers have evolved into digital designers, right? And you would also see, since a long time, there has been a movement of artists, a movement from interior designers or designers into digital designers. And today, that gate is even open for a lot of people. Today, even engineers sort of move into design, right? Business people, sales folks also move into design. And it's becoming a very open ground for anyone who wants to be a designer, can be a designer, right? So there are certain principles, there are certain methodologies, and a certain learning that anyone can get into, and eventually be a designer in that sense. And if you look at that, we have products since our childhood that we were exposed to, which we were thinking that it just okay, it just exists, but we never really thought about how did these products come into life, right? And if you notice, every single thing around you today has a design angle to it, and everything has been designed, right? A lot of these products are meant to be sold to customers. A lot of these products are meant to be used by people like you and I. And for making that experience better, there is a particular design that has been, handed down to creating these products. So be it a, chair. Why do we need four legs? Why can't a chair have two legs? Some designers come up with chairs with just one leg, right? There are a lot of innovations that people sort of tend to do with. But from a very mass consumption standpoint, you have a lot of products around you, and you could just take a look at your own room or wherever you're sitting today. If there's a water bottle next to you, that's probably designed to adhere to certain requirements that you have, right? I have a water bottle here, which is more like you flip it open and you drink from it. You can also twist it and drink from it, right? So it provides you multiple ways of consuming the water, and also thought through in a particular manner to give you that convenience, right? Motorbikes, your shoes, your jewelry. Jewelry is also a great example for everyday things that have been designed, to mimic your natural presence as well. um, yeah, so if you just look around your laptops, for example, right, or even your TV, for example, or your remote control, right? If you guys notice, if anyone of you have an AC at home, you'll also realize the AC remote, right, traditionally is very, very complicated, right? You have tons of buttons, you have tons of things to do, but you barely use any of those things. Today, in today's day and age, where a lot of these things are automated, a lot of these things are smart, you have lesser and lesser buttons, you have lesser and lesser options to play around, which you typically wouldn't. But then the evolution of design is there. Every product that you see today, every item that you see today has an evolution attached to it. And that evolution comes through a certain design thinking and certain design principles where people in the industry have been able to move forward with. So there's a everyday problem, everyday challenge. I think most of you would be able to relate. If you look at this two images side by side, right? What do you think is a problem here? and feel free to sort of put in a message on the chat. What do you think is the what's the problem? Where does it get lost? Like what's happening here? Go for it, please. Message. I mean, put in a message on chat. Tell me what you think. This is that's a very interesting point when I fail to sort of look at it. Gap in between the two doors. Absolutely, I think especially when it's very cold, you'll find a lot of cold air coming in. But that's a good observation. Absolutely, both the images look the same except the labels. Yes, they're very identical. Only the labels sort of tell you what they do. Not consistent across. Yes, they're not consistent. To a degree, yeah. I mean, like there are labels that sort of change to tell you what you need to do. Nitesh, you're talking about push door, VJ, entry, exit are opposite. Yeah. So if you look at this, I mean, and I faced this a lot in early in my career where office spaces had this concept, right? They had that the doors which you need to pull or you need to push, and typically, you don't know what to do because you haven't handled and you need to read the text that is the label that is there, which says push and pull. Um, Right. So people typically sort of get confused with push and pull, right? There's a lot of times you try to, pull, but it's actually push, and you get stuck, and you look at the label and says, okay, you need to push and do all of this. And this is not a, domestic thing at all. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Where anywhere in the world, you would see some of these examples being prominently sort of shown. And it's more of a trial and error sort of a method, right? Um, Recently, icon showing a man pushing or pulling a door. I found it better than text. Exactly. Awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And but if you also notice that there's a cognitive load for you to actually understand even before you take an action, right? You need to read the label or you need to look at an icon, you need to process that, and then you figure out whether I need to hold the handle and push it or do I need to pull it, right? And a lot of times these errors are not one-time errors, it's something that you repeat, right? And also the fact that from a content standpoint, if you look at it, push and pull are also first two characters are the same, so you tend to sort of not really read the last two characters if you're in a hurry, and both, and you would really not know what it means, right? Should I need to push it or I need to pull it? So this is a very common everyday sort of problem that most of us sort of face. And if you haven't, I think the world is obviously sort of progressed further with automated doors moving in and out. But yeah, I mean this is a kind of a example that exists um, everywhere, right? Throughout the world, even in some of the most advanced countries like Japan, you would probably see some of these examples. Um, but yeah, and this is a live, real example that some of us face. And if you understand like why this is the problem, right? I think one of you guys mentioned both look exactly the same, right? They look identical. So this identicalness, but they have a very different action, right? This leads to confusion, right? Both of them look same. If I remove the label, you would never know, do I need to push or I need to pull without trying and making a error out of it. Affordance helps you build muscle memory. There are certain action that you do every single day, and that action is needs to be consistent in nature throughout your phase of life, so that every time you actually see something, you know how it's going to work. Visual cues help in recognition, and that's a point that one of you guys made, that icons, you see some of the doors use icons, that actually really helps in terms of understanding what to do. So visually sort of helping users to make a particular decision really helps. And there's another point, right? If you talk about recognition, is easier than recall. So typically what happens is that um, recall is when your brain has to scan through memory lane and figure out what to do. Versus recognition is something that because you recognize it happened recently or happened in the past. You don't have the full context of it, but you vaguely sort of know it. It's very similar to, let's say you meet someone after 25 years, someone from school. You don't know their name, right? But you recognize their face, right? So recognition is a lot more easier than recall, and that's something that can be applied here. So typically, these sort of everyday challenges are can be designed better, right? We have real examples of it being designed better. And if you look at this, typically how our actions are perceived in how we interact with different products. Your handles, if you look at it, your handles are meant to be pulled, right? Look at your car door handle, right? Your car door handle is where you pull it out so that the door comes in, right? So similarly, if the action is for you to sort of open the door, pushing and pulling can happen in a single direction, right? You don't need to pull it or you don't need to push it. But then, let's say that the door has to open in one direction. You can just make it as simple as that. If someone wants to get inside, they have to push it. If someone wants to get outside, they need to pull it, right? So there's a lot of, progress that our society has made in terms of building some of these solutions. But yeah, we still have a long way. There are a lot of places that still struggle with this. Um, so that being said, there's another example that I think most of us would also have experienced this, right? Um, and if you look at this image, there are tons of switches, right? You have so many switches, you don't know what any of these switches do. And especially if let's say you're moving into a new house or moving into a new flat or anything of that sort, there's so many switches here. The only way that you can know what these switches do is by turning them on and seeing what's working, turning them off, turning the other one on. So it's more like a trial and error method, right? It becomes something that you need to get accustomed to, something that you need to train yourself for. It's not intuitive, right? It doesn't tell you exactly, oh, the third button, the third switch from the right hand side is going to switch on the fan, right? Some switches work inverted, which gets confusing. Absolutely, yeah. In fact, that's a good point, Kuldeep, because if any of you are into cars specifically, recently Mahindra launched this EV car with respect to the new EV cars that they launched. I'll not specifically talk about which model, but they have very interesting concept there, right? Like in a car, when you want to put down your window, you have this button that if you press down, the window comes down, right? And if you pull it up, the window goes up. So this car on the driver's seat, what they've done is, if you pull it up, right, the window comes down, and if you push it down, the window goes up, right? It's flipped. It's complicated. In fact, a lot of brands do this mistake. A lot of these small little things are not really looked at it in detail. And people like you and I, the end customers, are the one who are going to face the challenges, right? Yeah, so there's a prime example for how things can get confusing. It's very similar to the video. If you notice, you have tons of switches and you don't know what they mean. A quick and easy way that you can actually fix this is by putting labels. Um, you know, Icons or your text labels, amazing. You put them so that you can, recognize what it means, what it does, click on it without making any errors, and move with it. So that's a piece that has even today, like a lot of switches they don't have. It becomes very, very complicated. Even in my house today, it's the out of five different switches, three of them don't even work because they're not connected. I don't even know which they are. So yeah, it's a everyday problem. A lot of us sort of face this, and I think putting labels or icons sort of really help until we come up with a very different way. And I say most of you guys would have also seen a very digital console, right, where you have digitally showing some icon and some label. You tap on it. So yeah, I mean we are evolving in that sense, but persisting problem that a lot of us face. Um, Moving forward, I think this is a very interesting thing, and I want you guys to sort of um, share your thoughts, right? Why do we have these two different cups, right? On the left hand side, we can see a um, like a coffee cup. On the right hand side, also there's a coffee cup. What are the uses? The left one, what is it used for? The right one, what they use for? Just plug in your thoughts on the chat. Suresh, yeah, this is a one-time issue. If you use it, we get trained, right? Yeah, absolutely. Um, we are great at being trained, but we don't like to be trained, as human psychology says. But um, that is through, trial and error. Someone has to guide you. You're dependent. Um, a lot of times in public spaces, you make a fool of yourself. So a lot of these challenges exist. So the idea is to how do you make training also very less, right? Um, Yeah, easy to hold. Yeah, the left side picture is easy to hold. Absolutely. Safer in a metal cup than paper. Absolutely safe. Um, right paper cup can be used for takeaway. They're good for one-time use. Absolutely. Yeah, that's spot on. Um, right, use the lid to easily move and drink without spilling. And that's amazing. You guys know a lot of things already. So yeah, I mean, you guys are absolutely right. So if you look at the left side image, where you have a handle of sorts, um, typically these sort of cups are used when you're stationary, right? When you're still, when you're in a coffee house or you're sitting on the sofa, you're in your balcony, sipping on some coffee or some tea. You're not really sort of jumping around, moving, in a very active lifestyle. Whereas the cup on the right sort of helps you do this, right? If imagine you had to hold the ceramic cup or the metal cup and sort of, walk around the streets drinking coffee, right? And that would be a challenging thing to do, right? What do you think is the major con or the major problem with the right hand side, the paper cup issue? You guys said good things about it, right? Yeah, it's amazing for takeaways. You can just quickly sort of move around. Um, you can close the lid so it doesn't really sort of spill. But what do you think is what a challenge here with the cup on the right hand side? Cannot be reused. Yeah, absolutely. It's it's paper. It's something that you have to throw away after you use it. It's not very environmental friendly. Gets soft in a while, can collapse. You're absolutely right. It's meant to be drunk, in a certain period of time. Otherwise, it gets soggy and gets messy, right? Hot to hold, Lena. I think that's an amazing point. Um, you're absolutely right. It gets hot to hold. Whereas the cup on the left hand side, if it's hot, you have a handle through which you can hold. But on this, if you're drinking hot coffee or tea, it's going to be a huge challenge if it's hot, right? Um, which is why nowadays, if you look at Starbucks and your coffee days of the world, you'll see they make it a lot more thicker. They make it a lot more heavier. But traditionally, if you go to any chai place or anything of that sort, you find the typical old style cups, which over a period of time sort of gets soggy and they sort of melt away, right? There's a collar also to make it easier to hold. Yeah, they have the collar and doesn't slip from your hands very easily, but it's also challenging when it's very, very hot, right? You can't hold it for long. You need to sort of rest it and things like that. Which way, if you notice, not a lot of these takeaway coffee that you get, they're not really very hot coffee, right? A lot of these joints sort of gives you mediocre level hot, but then so that you don't have to jumble across different hands. But yeah, I mean that's a great point. You guys sort of nailed that. Um, yeah, sure, Shubham. Yeah, you joined late, but more than welcome. We just got started. Awesome. So now look at this, right? We have three images. And from the physical world, we're going into the digital world. And this is from a trusted SBI bank. What do you guys think about these three images? Just what comes to your mind first when you see the first one versus second one versus the third one? Don't go into, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but what do you feel when you look at these images? Tell me what you think on the chat. Too much to read in the first two. Yes, you're right. Text heavy. Yes, too many words, too many things happening. Second one, simple, required info. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you know, as we see, UI is looking good. The last one is very clean and minimalistic design. That's spot on, Priyanka. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, if you look at them, one after the other, celebrity. Yeah, the first one has a very known celebrity versus compared to the rest of the two. The last one shows main points in an easy way to read, showing the value. Superb, awesome. Yeah, even though the last one clean, we have to share the info. Sure, yeah. I mean, great points, guys. I mean, this is really awesome. I sort of dive a little deeper. So there are certain, and give you some context from a demographic standpoint as well. There are certain countries in this world which require to be over contextual, right, or over informative versus some of the other countries. So if you go towards the west, you would see things are not very informative compared to what we have in the east. In fact, if you go towards Japan, China, and some of these countries, you will see there is a lot more happening on an image. There's a lot more information given. There's a lot more text. There's a lot more graphics. There's a lot more um, information that they provide for any sort of artifact that they create, right? But if you look at it in our context, we also evolved, over the past 10, 15 years where, banners such as these were very information driven, right? And people, then some of the brands realize that no one is actually going to spend time reading all of this, right? And no one is going to read things that they cannot see properly, right? In fact, 50% of Indians today have some or the other issue with their eyes, right? So looking at all of these different parameters, you can't really put in a lot of information, a lot of text, a lot of graphics, where scanning them becomes a huge challenge, right? There's a lot of cognitive load, right? You have to zoom in, you need to figure out what it is, you need to read so much of, words, you need to understand it, then you need to take a call. If you notice the first one, there's a QR code in the center, which you know I don't know how anyone can scan something that small. Um, right? Sure, there's Amitabh Bachchan there, great, but then doesn't really tell me what all of the other elements sort of mean. The second one is much better, like you guys said, right? It tells you, the main crux of it. It also goes to an extent where it tells you that, you can follow us on Facebook. I don't know what the second icon is, Twitter, and the Twitter logo is old, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and I don't know that's Instagram. So a lot of these things, a lot of these information is there. Um, there is something called check eligibility now, SMS. So it becomes very hard to sort of understand some of the secondary content, while the primary content is pretty straightforward. And the third one, like you guys mentioned, it's very simple, it's very minimal, tells you what you need to do, focuses on the main message, right? And has a big large CTA. Sure, we can sort of debate about whether the red button is great on a blue background, things like that. But from a structure standpoint, it feels a lot more easy to consume, right? By the way, all of these three images are from the same website from the SBI. If you go to sbi.com today, you will .com or .in, I don't know, but you'll actually see the same three images scrolling banners on the website homepage. Um, so yeah, and if you look at it in that angle also, because it's the same brand, all of these three different, images are having a very different theme, right? They have a very different style, right? The colors are very different. The layouts, the text, the font that is used, everything looks very very different. It doesn't give a sense that it's from one single brand, right? We'll take another example, and you guys let me know what you think here as well. If you look at this, we have a sign up form or a registration form on the left hand side from Akasa Air, right? You guys would know Akasa, that's recently sort of come up. And on the right hand side, we have AirAsia. Like you guys would also know, AirAsia recently got acquired by Tata, and they sort of merged everything together. What do you guys think about these two sign up forms? Both are sign up forms, but what do you think about them? Which one would you prefer more, or which one is a lot more easier? Let me know in the comments. The second one is less detailed. Yeah. Second one is better, I'm assuming, Vijay, that's what you mean. Yeah. Right is better. Yeah. Second one is more looking good. Absolutely. I prefer the right, less input fields. I can use another account to sign up. Second one, user can complete the registration rapidly. Second one. Yeah, so all of you guys are inclined towards the second option, right? The AirAsia option. And we're talking today with this 2024, end of 2024, and we're talking about brands that are not even able to get their registration right? And this is just an A/B test that we did today, right? We just showed you two options. I did an A/B test, showed you two options. You guys told me the right side one is much better and you would rather prefer that. Um, I think that's hands down one of the right option to sort of go ahead with. And these are the things that the brands typically have access to, right? This sort of knowledge or this sort of insights. That I can, a lot of people would want to just register through Google. They have their Google logins. Some of the people who own iPhones or MacBooks can log in through Apple. Facebook is a prominent piece. So it makes it a little bit more easier to log in compared to the left-hand side where there's a lot of information that you feel that you have to fill. And if you, another piece of observation that you might want to sort of do is on the left-hand side, if you look at it, typically, we're all sort of exposed to multiple different sign-up forms. It's usually first name, last name, email, or phone number, and then we ask you personal details like gender, date of birth, country, right? If you look at this, the email and mobile is at the bottom, right? And gender, date of birth, and country is at in the middle. So that's also deviating from your set mental model, right? You're used to certain things because you've done enough registration in multiple different platforms. You're used to all of these things, but then here it's suddenly changing, right? It's making you, revisit your thoughts, revisit your mental models, whatever you're used to already. And, they're asking you to spend more cognitive load on this. So yeah, you guys are absolutely right. The right hand side is much, much better. Even brands today sort of, don't pay attention to some of these pieces. Moving on, there's another video, and this is just, this will be the last video, just 1 hour, 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'll paste it on the chat. I would want you guys to take a look at it. It's a quick video, but I want you guys to sort of come back to me and say, what is the psychology behind this? It's a short video, so I'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let me know what you guys think. People use the stairs instead of the escalator because it seemed more engaging and fun. That's awesome. Um, Anyone else? Thanks, Kuldeep, for that. Most people use new piano steps instead of automatic steps. Yeah, fun is a motivation. Absolutely. People enjoying when they use. That's right. I mean, awesome. Yeah, you guys are spot on. Both we can prefer based on situation. It is simple, stays, concept change. Yes. For mundane tasks, people will always choose a more frictionless option. The piano step is made mundane task. Climbing stays, which is change of behavior. Absolutely. People like creativity. That's an awesome point. This is the best way to make people be engaged. Yes. You guys, yeah, amazing thoughts. I think you guys are spot on this point as well. A lot of you talked about behavior, how some of these uh, new concepts of making your mundane task or making the most easier thing to do versus the hard thing to do. So climbing stairs is harder thing to do, right? And going on the escalator is much more easier. But from much larger standpoint, stays are something that is also beneficial for certain type of people, right? Like it sort of helps you be more on the move. You sort of reduce the use of eventually all of this works out well. Your escalators becomes on demand and things like that. So the human behavior change can happen through a certain influence, right? These influence are key in terms of making certain things more enjoyable than making it as a part of suffering, right? um, and you guys spoke about motivation. It plays a big role in changing human behavior. And if you rightly motivate them to take certain action, you have better ability of people making that change, right? I'll also give you another example today. If you look at, let's say, 100 floors of a building, right? From the ground floor all the way to the 100th floor, or let's say your apartment is in the 90th floor or whatever. It's a long journey from the ground floor to the 90th floor, right? You probably have to wait for a few minutes to get all the way to the top. And people actually hated this, hated the fact that they have to stand in an elevator, do nothing, wait for the numbers to climb and eventually reach the destination. And a lot of people complain to the building authorities saying that the elevator was very slow, right? Um, and because of this complaint, a lot of people face this complaint. What the building owners sort of did is they reached out to the elevator company, and the elevator company says, "No problem, we'll refit the elevator with better motors, faster motors, better cables, things like that. We'll make it 20% more efficient. We'll make it 20% more faster, so you will not have complaints, right?" And that used to huge cost to do something like this, especially in a building like that. Maybe a lot of huge cost that is going to be incurred. So what another person came and said is that, hey, instead of making this, spending millions of dollars on changing all of this, how about we make the inside of the elevator a little more enjoying, so that the journey is enjoying, right? So they lot of different ideas came into the picture, right? They thought about making a glass compartment where you can actually see through, right? They thought of adding some music and some video inside where you can actually sit and watch something. Um, there are certain elevators where would open up a small little foldable chair where because you have to wait for so long, you can sit, and there's a TV that plays ads or different videos or something of the news, for example, or sports. So people get to sort of enjoy that experience. And eventually, while they made all of these changes, all the complaints just disappeared. No one had a problem about the elevator speed at all. People actually enjoyed the ride all the way. So what this basically says is that it's not really about the speed at which you're going from point A to point B. It's about the journey and how enjoying that particular journey is, right? The tons of examples I can get into, and the real life example that we are also exposed to, but we fail to notice. But yeah, this is why mirrors were added. Yeah, exactly, right? Mirrors was added so you can sort of see how you look and style your hair or get things sorted. And by the time you do all of this, you don't even know when you got to your floor, right? So this sort of concept exists for various different kinds of products and services that we are used to. There are tons of examples that I can get into, but we'll do it on a later date. But yeah, you guys are spot on with some of your answers. Moving on. So what is design, right? And with all the things that we have seen so far, all the things that the videos we have seen, the examples that we have seen, from coffee cups to your stairs and everything. What do you think design is at this point of time, right? Quickly, I'll 30 seconds. Share your thoughts. Um, Let me know what your thoughts are. Like, what do you think is design after what you've seen so far? Obviously, uh, to build something useful. That's awesome, Suresh. Making products easier to use by consumers. Absolutely. Right. The being useful, making it easy are two great points. Anything else? Anyone else? Better experience. Yes. Right. Design is meant to make certain experiences better, to guide people in more simple and easy manner. Absolutely. Right. The more simple and easy you make, the more people tend to start using it. Right. Yeah, I mean, you guys are amazing answers. Thank you so much. Um, I'll take a little bit more definition perspective, right? Nitesh, you're saying kid of prototype means how your product looks like in future case of design. Yes. Easy to use, Himanshu. Yes, absolutely. So some of these, just to sort of define it further, it's a process in which you make people's life easy. You guys mentioned this. Awesome. Through entertaining ideas and intuitiveness, right? You make it easy. You make you guide people. You make it simple. All of this is going to better the experiences, right? It's a combination of what something looks like and how it works. Right? Today we're all used to, iPhones and MacBooks and great cars and great things. Um, it's always a combination. If you look at it, the better the product is, it also correlates to how good it looks like and how it works, right? So it's a combination of how good it looks and how it works. Lastly, it's a experimental thought, and this is very unique, right? So, it's a definition that I've written. It's an experimental thought, right? It's an idea that's in your head to give people what they never thought of, right? It's like how Henry Ford said, right? If you ask um, if you ask uh, if you ask a cowboy, what do you want? He'll say he wants a faster horse, right? So a lot of these innovations, a lot of this design thinking comes in a format where people have never thought about it, right? A classic example is your iPhone. iPhones, when the first iPhone came, it just had one button, right? And eventually they want to get rid of buttons completely. That was not an A/B testing. That was not like a tested with users to say, would you like no buttons? Would you like less buttons? Right? It was an innovative idea where it was an idea that got translated into a product which none of us even thought about it. Right? We didn't know we wanted something like that. We didn't know that that was possibility. But that happened. And today all of our phones, don't have a button on the screen at all. So these are some of the things that design can impact, and we'll go forward with it. And today's day and age, right? We have tons of different design roles. We'll talk about specifically on the UI, UX, and product design. These are prominent design functions as of today. I'll talk to you guys about what UI, UX, and product design means. On the UI side, right, your focus is slightly different, right? We spoke about how design has to also work on how it makes you feel, right? So you, as UI designers, your goal is to make things familiar to the user, right? Reducing the cognitive load, reducing the effort that it is putting on your mind. If you remember the SBI banner example I gave, so the third one is a lot more simpler, right? It's more minimal, it's clean, it's easy to understand. The colors are not striking, the fonts are easy to read, right? So you also make it aesthetically pleasing, right? As UI designers, your main focus is on the load, on how you feel, some of the recall aspects, and the aesthetics part, right? Um, if you look at UX designers, um, you've slightly sort of increased the focus areas. While you also look at the UI part of it, you also focus on things like, what does the user, how does the user go from point A to point B, right? Who are the kind of users that will use it, right? Like for example, the example that we saw, older people will tend not to use the stays even if it is fun. They would rather prefer more convenience, right? So in that case, knowing exactly who your user is really helps you define your product experience around, right? And also, there's a lot of research work that goes as a UX designer, where like how I did A/B testing with you guys in terms of that sign up page, right? Like that, a lot of this research with real live examples, with real users, understanding what they want, testing them out, figuring if one option works better than the other, learning through your industry experts, learning through case studies, learning through articles, and so on and so forth. That's the research piece. And lastly, usability. How easy is it to use? One of you guys mentioned in the chat, how easy it is to use sort of helps better the design experience. So as a UX designer, you focus on some of these aspects along with the points of UI, but your primary focus is on this piece. Now, talking about product design, this is a new sort of role that has opened over the past 6 years. Product design, on top of UI and UX, adds on a little bit more. It's primarily focusing on things like your business thinking, right? You're also part of, increasing the revenue of an organization. You're also part of impacting the businesses that are part of the organization. We talk about the strategy. How do we get from point A to point B by doing certain activities? Should we not do this? Should we do this? How do we sort of negotiate which is better, which is time consuming, high impact, low effort, and this kind of things, right? We also, as product designers, you also look at metrics, which is your data. How many people actually bought your shoes over the past 1 month? How can we make that number grow, right? Are people clicking on the button? Why aren't they clicking on the button? How do we make people click on this button? So this sort of number-based analysis is on the metric piece. And also when I talk about end to end, it's about knowing the entire scope of a business itself, right? Everything from an idea to making it go live, and also taking a lot of data and strategy into consideration. Suresh, you're talking about, it seems like UX design doing the same. Absolutely. There's a lot of overlap between these roles. Right? UX designers typically don't, as traditionally the definition goes, and today, UX designers tend to do a lot more transitioning themselves into product design. But as UX designers, you majorly focus on creating very seamless flows and journeys, making sure that the friction point is very less, the pain points are considered. You're actually like talking to the users, making sure the interviews are happening. You have really good insights. There's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of research work that goes into the solution that you're doing, right? As product designers is expanding slightly a little bit more, and you can always overlap between some of these pieces. You're more inclined towards creating the annual plan for the entire organization, right? What kind of design initiative should be part of the organization's goal? What's the vision of the organization? How do we sort of make sure that we hit our goals rightly? How do we strategize this part? Who do we hire? How do we hire? All of these things come as a product designer's scope. Um, And yeah, as rightly you said, there is a lot of overlap, which is why the transition is also happening. Um, yeah, and these are some of the three different key roles that you see in the design industry, at least from a very modern format, right? It doesn't stop here. In fact, there is something called business designers. There's something called hybrid designers. There's something called full stack designers. There are tons of things, but largely these three are something that you would be exposed to. Now, if you look at what role suits you, because all of us come with different skills, different ideologies, different backgrounds. How do you know which role suits you, right? Which role suits you? So the first one, if you are a visual being, right, like human being, if you're a visual being, and you love pixels, you love colors, you love typography, you like to play around with gradients, you like illustrations, you like hierarchy, spacing, all of these things, right, which is very, very visually demanding. And you sort of nitpick on the smallest of small things, right? If there's a extra 2 pixel between two elements, you start panicking. So if you're a very visual being, you like the creative approach to problem solving. UI design is something that you'd mostly be inclined towards. But if you're on the other side, like if you're on the problem solving or the solution being, right, and a lot of engineers, a lot of product, a lot of these sort of people are very solution oriented. Which is why you see a lot of engineers moving into product design, for example, right? These are the kind of people who love problems, day-to-day problems, right? They thrive on making sure that they're part of solutionizing, that they want to go quickly fix it. They want to sort of take a whiteboard, put some ideas, say, okay, we can do this is how certain ideas come across. You have a conversation, you battle it out, you do all of these things, right? That is something on the solution space, right? And you generate tons of it, right? You also sort of base this off research, you base this off on data and things like that, and you sort of very solution oriented. So this is where you would probably be more inclined towards UX designer, right? There's no fast and hard rule. You can mix and match. If, like, for me, for example, I personally am both a visual being and a solution being, because early in my career I used to be a graphic artist, which means I used to sort of do digital artwork, create apps and games that are very more creatively oriented and things like that. And also being exposed to a lot of product design spaces on the UX front, with app development and things like that. So for me, it was more like a combination of both. I love doing both of these things, which is why the third point, which is a product designer, um, as a outcome being, right? You like data, you like things that the numbers will sort of help you move forward. You're more focused on go to market strategies. Okay, let's say you want to launch a product. How do we launch it? When do we launch it? What's the right time? Is that the right market? These sort of activities. You focus on business growth, because some of the revenue is also targeted or tagged to you. You're also part of a business mindset. Some level of that piece also comes into the picture, which is, if you have all of these different inclinations as a combination, you can do all of them, right? So product designer, UX designer, UI design. Let's say you also love graphic design, right? You like creating banners, you like creating icons, you like creating artwork, right? So that's the last one, which is called hybrid design. That's when you love all of them. You enjoy all forms of designs. You like creating videos also. You like creating animations. You like um, you like photography, for example, right? A lot of these creative processes which exist. If you like some of these pieces, you would then probably look into being a hybrid design, which is you're great at multiple different things. Um, but yeah, none of these mean that you're one is better than the other. None of those things. There's amazing UI designers, visual designers, specialists, who are doing amazing in their careers, versus a UX designer who only is focusing on problem solving. They're doing amazing. So all of these have their individual tracks. All of these have their own career path that you can take. Um, but yeah, I mean, looking at how you are inclined towards, you can choose any of these things. There's a lot of introspection that you'll have to do to get here as well, right? Moving on, I'll talk about a little bit about competency metrics. We have tons of. I'll not deep dive into this because if you Google competency metrics, you'll find every brand has a competency metric. Every design team has a competency metrics. And when I say competency metrics, is about different skills required to fulfill a particular role, right? And for me, and I'm actually currently in the progress of making robust competency metrics for UB. And in that process, I've learned a lot of things. I have spoken to a lot of people. I've done a lot of research. I've come up with these, different categories of competency metrics, which sort of summarizes designers as a whole. And if you notice one thing, right, it's a very different pieces of competencies, right? You have communication and collaboration all the way from there to being analytical. How is your behavior, right? What strategies do you use? How do you plan and manage? There's something called design operations. So a lot of these competencies are something that you know every organization will have their own set of metrics. At UB, I'm currently in the progress of making one for the organization, which is why I'm able to share this with you guys as well. But yeah, I mean, just an overview, these are some of the competencies that I'm creating personally. And just to deep dive on some of these things, right? So what's happened is I've categorized this in two parts. One is the skill set and one is the mindset. Skill sets are your typical, design skill sets, right? How good you are at tools, how good you are at problem solving and things like that. Mindset will be more focused towards behavior, your leadership qualities, your mentorship qualities, and things like that. So overall, putting micro categories as well. There's a 37 parameter framework that I'm creating. It sounds like it's a lot, but it's also because it's extremely important for individuals like me or anyone else to know how much of these they're able to fulfill so that they can progress in their career more consciously, right? And when I'm talking about these parameters, right, it's not about UB as a company or domestically as Bangalore or anything of that sort. I've taken a very global approach to this. I've researched brands all the way from the west to east, and come up with this 37 parameter framework, which helps figure out what skills do you need to go forward in your career as designers, right? Um, Looking at that, I'll just sort of talk specifically about some of the most ignored skills as a designer. And if you guys, highly recommend you guys focus on some of these aspects, which typically gets lost in our day-to-day life. One of the pieces is mentorship. you know Mentorship is a amazing skill for someone to develop, because you become like a leader of the pack, eventually, right? You lead with examples. You are amazing at your craft. You help others, not only yourself, right? You're not only looking at yourself, but you're also concerned and you're also motivated to help others, right? While building very strong foundational team mindset. It's not about I, it's about we, it's about the team, right? And you guys would have noticed there's a lot of whenever you get like Slack messages or Teams messages, you have emails, right? A lot of people say I in the email. I think that has to transition into we, right? Is as most of the work also, if you have done, we have obviously sort of taken help from a lot of other people. So mentorship is a key contributor as a skill that is mostly ignored. The second one is on the maturity. strength lies in attitude and personality, right? Um, you're, you know, you're going to face a lot of different situations which are going to be complicated, which is going to be, hard to take in. It's going to be tough, but then the ability to stay calm and composed, tackle crisis, and crisis is not going to reduce in the corporate setup. Um, and be the person who is confident in what you know, right? I think showing some of these attributes and personalities is going to tremendously sort of help you build value within the team and outside of the team as well, all the stakeholders that you work with. Showing the sense of maturity sort of helps you go further and sort of create more impact, right? Thirdly, the communication and collaboration. You guys would have heard this multiple times already, but the fact that it's lost in translations, right? Communication is extremely key. Articulate your ideas well, right? Put in effort on presentation. Put in effort on convincing others. Be more um, be more visual centric in this particular case. Share your thoughts, share your ideas. Um, Take stance in terms of communicating the things that you think about a little bit easier so that people can also understand, right? And at the same time, be also very collaborative. Like I said, I should move into we. You're going to collaborate with product managers, engineers, program managers, and a lot of different people, right? And you'll have to figure out ways to collaborate with them, causing the least amount of friction, right? So that you're achieving the goals that have been set. Lastly, first principles. Uh, I can't emphasize more on this. First principle is back to basics. As and when you grow in your career, you tend to forget the basic points, basic learnings that you did. A lot of theory, like this whole session is a theory session, right? Like the whole theory, practice that in real life. Otherwise, the whole theory will be of no point, right? Get your foundations right and stick to it, right? When I say foundations, everything from your design core competencies, how to use tools, how do I design certain things, how do I design banners. Practice makes perfect. We can't be perfect, but then we'll try to achieve that. So go back to basics whenever you are. Your first principles will help you solve even the most complex problems, complex teams, complex peoples, um, to achieve the goals that you have set. On the right hand side, if you look at it, typically this is a metric that most organizations follow in terms of your commitment and competency as a metric. So the idea here is that any leader in an organization um, would sort of evaluate anyone else in the team in terms of how committed they are to the mission of the organization and what is the competency levels, right? And you'd always want to strive to be in the right top quadrant, right? That's where you want to focus and try to be in. Higher commitment to the organization goals, higher commitment to the team goals, higher commitment to achieving whatever the organization set in achieving, and also at the same time being very good at what you do, right? Constantly learning, constantly upscaling yourself, being the role model, being the benchmark setter, right? This sort of framework will sort of help you get into that quadrant, and you would want to try to be there. And a lot of organizations tend to follow this. That being said, we are also short of time, but I'll quickly take 2-3 minutes to talk about design thinking. So we spoke about a lot of examples on the design side. There is the clear cut example of how we would want to design for the better experience, the better user experience, right? We want it to be better for people like you and I. At the same time, it is not easy to make it happen because you need technology that is going to be helping you get there, right? I can think about going to Mars and building a colony over there, but if there's no technology to take me up there, it's not going to really help. And the third one is on the business part. If I'm not able to sort of give you a context as to how the return on investment is going to be, right? No one is going to fund me to achieve, the goal, right? So you need funding from the business teams. You need the technology teams to help you build it, and you need to focus your ideas on humans, right? So these three, other you need to sort of fuse them together and then sort of create a solution. Um, how much cost for making such a product at the bottom? Uh, I did not quite understand this question, but um, okay. So I will come back, Rajagopal. So there are different design thinking methodologies. We have one from IDEO, which is your famous, design thinking process. You have something called British Design Council on Double Diamond, which you guys would have, already heard a lot about. There's IBM Loop, which they have their own design thinking practice. I personally, I like the Double Diamond process, which is divergent converge, which helps you um, work individually, you know, and also work together as a team, right? So I think that's you guys should sort of read up on this. It's a process that I follow in my current organization. My team follows that. When I was in Walmart, we had the same process, design thinking process that we did. So it's a lot more flexible, a lot more you know easy to use from large to small organizations. In fact, you can modify this further and talk about something called lean UX. You guys can Google it. It's a shorter, more concise version of a double diamond, which, if you're a lean team and a lean organization, you quickly get, iterations and solutions out. Um, I'll talk about a little bit about the tools per se. We have different tools that all of us use. I'll talk about the tools that I've been exposed over the past many years and what we currently use at UB as well. So you have different parts to it. You have research and discovery, which is required for you to understand the users, well into proven studies and expert advice. So we use something called usertesting.com to hire users and test your flows, for example. There's something called Useful, which can create tutorials, your product tours, your step-by-step, tutorial in that sense. There's I would strongly recommend using Nielsen Norman Group for best practices, studies, guidelines, and things like that. They have amazing library of articles and case studies that you can go through, and obviously your typical Google search is also going to help. Um, on the UI UX part, Figma has sort of taken over most of the tool spaces. So we use Figma. We've been using Figma since few years for a lot of wireframing, visual design, prototypes, and so on, so forth. FigJam for a lot of user flows, journeys, ideations, maps. Um, we use Adobe Creative Cloud specifically on the folks that are doing video production or animations or those kind of things, creating icons, creating logos. We use Creative Cloud, Illustrator, for example. Lastly, there's something called Locofy, and this is, I think, um, very prominent in this day and age with AI coming into everything. Automation, no code, design to dev. So Locofy is a startup again. I worked with them personally from our organization itself to build their product charter. So we're helping them sort of get to build their own, businesses as they building their product. So everything from like you design something in Figma, you can just like connect the file to your Locofy platform. The designs are converted to code. You can choose what kind of code you want, React, HTML, and so on and so forth. You can also connect your design systems. It's very robust. It's evolving. You have tons of different tools today. I personally use Locofy, which is why I can talk about it. Um, Lastly, on the data and metric part, and this is something that I would, request all of you, if you get a chance, please, get into these modes of, um, tools. You have Amplitude, which is one of the global leaders for um, generating data and metrics, right? Like you can track events, you can track funnels, you can do A/B testing, a lot of those things. We have something called Hotjar, and that Hotjar is very specific to UX also because it provides you video recording of sessions. It provides you heat map. It'll tell you where, cursor movements, which part of your page has more focus compared to others. It's very design centric, right? And lastly, our tried and tested Google Analytics. Every single company would probably be using this. They do a lot of automations. You can have very detailed analysis, and it's also very integrated within the Google ecosystem, right? So things get organization that use Google for their email and other things. Google Analytics becomes integrated piece altogether. So this is like a view of how what kind of tools we use today, and most of these are prominent, very popular ones. Going forward, just a couple of more minutes. I hope you guys are sticking on. Um, Talking about from a roadmap standpoint, I mean, this is a very complicated process, right? Every organization will have their um, sort of roadmap for a designer, right? Um, when do you become an associate designer all the way to becoming a CEO, right? So this map sort of gives you an understanding about what does level one and all the other level looks like. I'm also currently working on career charters and career progressions for designers, where we talk about an associate product designer, what they need to do to become product designers, what product designers need to do to become seniors, and so on and so forth. So you'll also come across two different terms. You'll come across things like an IC, which is an individual contributor. You'll also come across a term like people management, right? For most of the initial part of your career, it focus on being an individual contributor first 10 years, right? In fact, today also I individually contribute on certain projects. I design as well, right? And a lot of my time also goes into people management. So never let your craft die, right? So get on at any, even if you're a VP or a senior VP or chief design officer as well, it's very important to keep your craft handy. So you'll never not be an IC. I'll always want to strive to be that. So this sort of gives you a very, bifurcated example of how different levels look like. And then, yeah, and different organizations have different levels. I remember in Flipkart, we had something called as designer one, designer two, then you have senior designer one, senior designer two. You have a lot of different, roles, lot of the ladder was very, very long. Um, Smaller organization ladder is very, very small. Some organization will just have product designer, right? They'll be 20 years experienced. They'll be one of the core members. Still, they'll just have a title of product designer, right? So there are companies on both extremes that do this. Um, some of the key strategies, and this is where I will leave you guys with, right? Um, these are some of the strategies I learned in my career in very different ways, right? Learn one way to say yes and 100 ways to say no. As designers, we tend to get pushed into doing things, expanding our charters, expanding our time, ad hocs all the time, things like that, right? You're asked to do a lot more than you signed up for, right? Which is great. I mean, when you're learning, it's amazing. But I also noticed that, myself included, a lot of people shy away from saying no, right? And it's not like saying simple no. There's actually a book called 100 Ways to Say No. I think you should, there are very, very smart ways where you can deny certain things and or negotiate to a point where it also suits you as a designer. So, learn how to say no. Um, and learn how to break tasks into smaller tasks and approach phase wise. So this is one of the key learnings if you're in a startup, for example, right? Um, so what happens is that you have an amazing idea. This idea is going to take you, let's say, one whole year to build, right? So engineering and business will come back to you and say, hey, we can't build this in 2 months, but we need to start selling something. Business will come and say that we can't wait for 1 year, otherwise we'll lose the market. Some competitor is going to take away. So at that point of time, you learn quickly how to break this 1 year project into, let's say, monthly projects, right? You break the larger problem into smaller problems and you chunk it, you make it small chunks, and you solve for that particular piece and you launch it, right? So, you do one part at a time, and then that becomes eventually the entire product as you planned earlier. So approach it phase wise. What is phase one? What is phase two? What is phase three? It is fine to have phases. It is great to have phases. That's how your MVP sort of came into picture, right? Your most viable product. Um, what is the minimal things that you need for the product to work, right? That's the concept. You start from there, you create different phases, you create different goals, all of that, and you take it forward in that sense. So that's a as a key thing that I would request you guys to sort of get into. Um, yeah, this is I don't know, I can't over I this is very, very important. Over the past 12 years, what I've observed and what I've learned is documenting your work. Look, we are designers. We're not going to sit and write things, right? Our work is on the laptops, on the tools, creating something digitally, sharing it, and things like that. We don't strive on Excels or documents and things like that, right? This becomes a piece that we tend to ignore. But if you could document it, that would be great, right? You'll not really know the value of it while you're doing it, but when time comes, when the situation arrives, that document that you created is going to be your gold mine, right? Um, Everything, what is the project status, to who is it dependent on, when is it going to be done, what did we talk about in the meeting, what did you align on, who's supposed to do what. So all of these things, right? It becomes, when you're doing very verbally, a lot of things get lost in translations. It's great to document it, which is why there's a why do engineers need PRDs? Because you have a documented piece of evidence to tell exactly what should happen. Similarly, as designers, it's very essential to document your work. Um, Imagine building case studies as and when you're designing in your workspace, right? Typically, we do case studies after we have done the project, after everything is done. Then we sit and we document, right? Then we say, okay, this is the case study, this is the problem statement I did. Imagine doing that as and when you're actually doing it, right? How easy would that be? You would never additionally have to build case studies. Your work itself is a case study, right? So think about it that angle. It'll definitely help you in multiple different ways. Lastly, as designers, don't fear, be humble, let the work do the talking. I think this, I've experienced very diverse set of people in the design space, right? Even if you're coming from, let's say, very prominent colleges or you very prominent organizations, you have great amount of experience, you're very senior, it doesn't really matter, right? Um, don't fear from talking to another human being, because they're just another human being. At the same time, be humble. With all the success that you've gained, it is fine, right? Be humble, be grounded, let the work do the talking more than your voice or your words doing the talking. Your evidence is your work. Your evidence is your design. Let that sort of take you forward and focus on that primarily. Yeah, I mean, overall, went on a big monologue, but I hope uh, covered a lot of topics. But I'll open up the gate for questions if you guys have. This was Suresh is asking, being an IC in a long while is challenging to experience people managing. Absolutely. I think um, as more you go into being an IC, IC sort of focuses morely on your craft, right? You want to be a better designer, right? You want to see your work out there, right? You want your designs being experienced by people around the world. That's the motivation for a lot of ICs. But when you're transitioning into people management, it's not a switch on, switch off. You auto internalize that. Do you like mentoring people? Do you like seeing other people succeed, right? Empowering them to do whatever they can, being part of their daily activities as well, right? Does that motivate you? Does that sort of bring you joy, right? I think those are the early signs that you can start noticing to eventually see yourself as people managers. Um, and at a certain point, it becomes people managers itself is a very challenging thing, right? It's a extremely challenging thing. There's a lot of empathy and things that are involved, which becomes hard. Nitesh, when started new patch, sir, and what about I let Harleen sort of take this question, but yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe I can answer that, after we're done answering questions about the session today. We have Kuldeep who has said, honestly, this is a refreshing webinar. Thank you, Arpith, which I, concur with. This has been a wonderful session, Arpith. Thank you so much for, delivering all these wonderful insights.
Thanks, Kuldeep. Means a lot.
I want to thank you, Arpit, for your time and for joining us today and delivering this wonderful masterclass. Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute. The QR code on the certificate will actually take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that's been created especially for you on our website. So please accept this token of appreciation from the Institute.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I do remember we had one question in the start of the session that I think you had said we'd come back to, right? On the
Yeah.
AI driven, yeah. Rajgopal
Oh,
has
yeah.
asked, any thoughts on designing AI driven platforms where the AI adapts dynamically to each student's learning progress, like hands on projects like chatbots, interactive games, and simulation?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's an amazing question. I think um, since past 2 years, in fact, past 1.5 years or so, AI has become like um, the kid next door. It's what everyone in every organization wants to do and focus on. Um, and every and if you look at Zoom today, also has a AI piece as well. But yeah, a lot of organization, a lot of problems around the world are being consulted through AI today. Um, and we will talk about platforms which are AI driven. You have specific platforms that are solving through AI. You also have organizations that are incorporating AI into their product workflow, right? So, specifically talking about students' learning progress, right? Like hands-on projects and chatbots and things like that. I remember I don't quite remember the name, but there was a company that teaches kindergarten students, right? And they make the entire learning experience very engaging. So they put games. You can learn through games. You can learn through interactions and things like that. They actually incorporated an AI space over there where AI sort of helps you create new games, right? And looking at kids today, games become boring very soon. So AI is also part of such activities where it helps you create games, it helps you sort of monitor progress, it sort of summarizes a lot of activity. One fine example is in my current organization today, we're using AI to summarize enormous amount of data, which it's going to take a lot many human hours to read through. We're using AI to, consume all of this data and summarize in one, let's say, one page, right? Um, where the users will typically just read through this page and get, enough information about an entire, let's say 5, 6 books, for example. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, you know, games, especially, or interactions, especially on the learning side, the platforms have already sort of started incorporating it, making, very uniquely different games and building them at the scale. I think that's what's happening today.
Great, thanks for that, Arpit. I don't see any more questions, so I think we can kind of just wrap up too, right? But
Yes.
before that, yeah, one second. So thank you once again, Arpit, for joining in and giving us these wonderful insights. It's been wonderful having you. Thank you for your time and your valuable insights, right? And I think,
Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you, everyone in whoever joined. Amazing audience, by the way. You guys have, you guys helped me a lot by answering giving amazing answers and sort of engaging me with this. But yeah, uh, thank you so much.